Have you ever wondered how some copywriters seem to be able to write about literally any topic? You're not alone. Over the course of my career, I've written about some pretty crazy topics that I honestly knew very little about, if anything at all. This is actually a pretty essential skill for a content writer in an agency or freelance setting. But the good news is that it's a learned skill. And today I'm going to break down my process for writing authoritative content on topics I know absolutely nothing about. Hey guys, Lexi Hartman here. Welcome to iHartContent, the agency's agency where we help growing marketing agencies and practitioners learn more, level up, and create more effective, authentic marketing content. But before we dive in, take a minute to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and turn on notifications. We're just getting started over here on YouTube, but if you're a marketer or agency leader who wants to level up in 2022 and beyond, this is the channel for you. You won't want to miss what we have in store. I'm sorry, you're writing about what? That was literally my husband's reaction when I told him about one of my assignments a few months ago, writing for an automotive blockchain startup. So he knew what cryptocurrency was and he had an idea of what blockchain was about, but DeFi, proof of stake, consensus mechanisms. The truth is, I hardly knew what any of those things were either. Yet over these past few months, my team and I have written a bunch of authoritative articles on them, all of which have been reviewed by subject matter experts, given the seal of approval, and are now happily ranking on page 1 for some of my clients' target keywords. And it's not the first time. I routinely write about topics I know very little about, and I have for years. What's more, it doesn't take me all that long to research and write these articles. We're talking about topics like cybersecurity, wildfire prevention, offshore construction, and many others. You guys, I know nothing about cybersecurity, but I currently write for one of the biggest names in cyber protection for the US public sector. So how do I do it? Today, I'm going to be walking you through my process for writing like an expert on subjects you know absolutely nothing about. And by the time we're through, you'll have a step-by-step playbook for doing it too. Okay, let's dive in. Step 1, it starts in onboarding. Writing authoritatively for clients in unfamiliar industries begins with proper onboarding. For these clients, it is extra important to dig deep into the why behind their business and spend as much time as it takes upfront to understand what they do. The more information you can gather ahead of time, the less you will need to bug them for additional insight down the road. At a minimum, you'll want to put together a basic brand profile for your client. You can follow the link in the description to get access to the same questionnaire I use with my clients for inspiration. Besides the basic contact information and brand details, you'll want to ask questions like, what is the top performing piece of content on your website or social media channels? Which piece of content performs poorly? Understanding what's working, and sometimes even more importantly, what's not working, will help give you insight into what has been resonating with your client's audience. You may also want to consider asking what your client's favorite piece of content in their industry is, even if it's not something they've published. Another question to ask is, can you share any links to trusted industry resources that you would like us to cite or use as a reference in our content? There is nothing worse than citing your client's competition in the content you create for them, or citing a resource with a poor reputation. Finding out which resources are reputable will point you in the right direction during your research. You'll also want to ask, are there currently any respected industry influencers that your brand would like to emulate or whose audience you'd like to appeal to? Following and researching industry influencers can help you stay on top of what's trending in your client's vertical. Even more importantly, keeping an eye on the comments and followers on these influencers' channels will help you learn to speak your client's target market's language. And don't forget this important question. Are there any industry resources, influencers, or topics that we should not mention in our content? You guys, knowing who not to emulate or mention in your content is critical. Nothing will lower your credibility quite like referencing someone who's persona non grata in your client's field. The same goes for topics. It's tough for outsiders to know what's taboo or inappropriate in specific industries. So you'll need to understand what kinds of topics to steer clear of, especially if those topics are divisive or controversial. Armed with a solid brand profile and an understanding of which resources and topics are appropriate to use, it's time to dig in and do some research. But before we go any further, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming content. All right, there's no way around it. It's time for step 2, research. Chances are your client's trying to attract prospects in the upper part of the funnel. In other words, people in the awareness and consideration phases of the buyer's journey. Good news, as a newcomer to the industry, that's where you are too. The same content that you'll find helpful as you research your client's industry and audience is the content that your client's prospects will also want to turn to. Block off a solid chunk of time at the beginning of your relationship with your client to take a deep dive into the resources and influencers they mentioned in their brand profile. Make a note of things like words or terms you don't understand, and then search for a glossary. The style and tone of the content. Is it educational, lighthearted, all business? What's the reading level? Check the content's readability score using a tool like Grammarly. What topics seem to be front of mind for this audience? What are their pain points? Which topics seem to be divisive or controversial? Are there any questions that come up for you in your research that don't seem to be answered comprehensively or in simple language? That could be a fantastic opportunity for your client. Once you have a good idea of where the holes in your understanding are, it's time to ask your client for clarification and do some good old-fashioned research on your own as well. Step 3, get topic approval. It is essential to run your topic ideas by your client, at least in the beginning. It is no fun to spend the time to write a great piece of content only to find out that the topic is not in line with your client's goals. During your research phase, you probably notice some content opportunities that you might want your client to consider. Make a list of at least 4 or 5 topics that you think would work well for your client and send it to them for approval and feedback. Once you've settled on a topic and your client has approved it, it's time to outline. Step 4, write a detailed outline. When you're writing about unfamiliar topics, outlines serve a greater purpose than simply keeping you organized and on topic. When you provide a detailed outline to your client, you're giving them a wireframe for the finished blog post and giving them an opportunity to provide feedback before the writing even begins. Your outline should include, at a minimum, the title of the piece, the tone, what tone of voice will you use as you write, your target audience or persona, your target word count, keywords, the resources you plan to cite, all of your planned titles and subtitles, those are your H2s and your H3s, and a brief description of what you'll cover in each of those sections. Check the link in the description for my blog outline best practices. You want to strike a balance between being detailed enough to give your client a clear understanding of the direction you'd like to take, while also avoiding investing too much time in a piece of content that may or may not even be approved. Think of it as a lean process, with each step being its own cycle of validated learning. Creating a blog on an unfamiliar topic is definitely an iterative, collaborative process. To see what this looks like in practice, you can swipe one of my actual outlines for a client. That link is in the description as well. Step 5, it is time to write backwards. We've already gone through 4 steps and we're just now getting down to the actual writing part. This is where all your preparation pays off. You've likely already learned a thing or 2 or 3 about your client's industry as you did your research and put your outline together. Now we're going to take that outline and really dive in. Sometimes it's hard to have a start to finish story in mind when you first sit down to write about an unfamiliar topic. That's okay. I have a trick to tackle that. It all comes down to writing your blog post backward. Yes, backward, as in finish to start. Here's what I mean. Write your conclusion statement first. Writing your final paragraph first will help you stay focused on the conclusions you want your reader to draw and the feeling you want them to walk away with. That will empower you to stay on track as you take on the rest of your writing and ensure that you're always clear on where you want to lead your reader. Next, write the body second. Because we have a detailed approved outline to work from at this point, we should try to stick to it. When writing for an unfamiliar topic, I like to research each of my main titles individually. For example, in the sample outline I provided in the free swipe file I mentioned before, I would start by typing my first headline, The Subscription Economy by the Numbers, into Google. I'll take a look at what articles are currently ranking well for that term, and I'll use those as inspiration for that section. After that, it's a matter of rinsing and repeating for each section. Next, write the intro last. It might be counterintuitive, but writing your intro paragraph last can help you create a more cohesive story from start to finish. By now, you already have your conclusion paragraph written, which means that you know the feeling you want your readers to walk away with. You've written the body of that blog to support and lead up to that conclusion. Now you can write your intro paragraph with a clear view of what your reader can expect to get out of the content. You also have a better understanding of the topic at hand at this point, so you're more likely to be able to write something that packs a powerful punch and makes your reader want to dive in. Next, edit for readability. Finally, drop your newly created blog post into Grammarly and give it a read through, making sure that your story is cohesive and that you've connected all the dots. Add a sentence or 2 here and there where needed for context or to bridge any gaps. Finally, check your readability score and resolve any grammatical errors that might have popped up. Congratulations, you wrote an awesome blog and learned new things. Writing about unfamiliar topics is actually one of my favorite parts of my job. I've acquired a ton of new knowledge, admittedly with varying degrees of usefulness in my day-to-day life. And as time goes on, I'm able to expand the list of industries I can effectively serve. While your first time or two of following this process might feel labor intensive, it will get easier and faster too. Eventually, you'll build trust between you and your client, and they may no longer need to approve every topic or outline. In the beginning, though, it pays to take the extra time to really understand your client's industry. Do the research, outline effectively, and submit work for approval. All right, everyone, I hope you found this helpful. Give this process a try and make sure you let me know in the comments how it works for you. I'd also love to hear about any tips and tricks you've developed for writing about new topics. Once again, don't miss out on those free resources in the description section. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I'm Lexi Hartman for iHartContent. See you next time.